Hey there, this is Alex Kluge. I'm here from Toronto Home Experts. I'm going to dive into the February 2024 Toronto real estate market update. Okay, before we begin, there's been a lot in the media about what's happening with Toronto real estate prices. And certainly, the new numbers came out this month. And like every month, I was excited to review them and see what's really happening. And yeah, there's certainly some optimistic takes to look at, and I'll present those. But in reality, like the numbers look really bullish on the surface, but if you really dig deeper, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And while there's some certainly encouraging signs, like the entire market is not, we're not back in a bull market. Let's say it that way. Like, things are changing. Yes, things are improving, but I want to dive into the numbers just to point out a few things because it's really important to like take some of the like surface numbers with a grain of salt because like really at the end of the day, the market's still not amazing. Yes, some segments obviously are performing better than others, but I really want to dive into these numbers so we can talk about that in a few moments. All right, so sales volume. If we look at where we were last year, like, wow, we're up 18%. That's awesome. Like, yeah, that's awesome, but let's not get too carried away with this. Because if you recall, last January was the second lowest sales volume on record, right? So, like, hey, it's only up from there, right? Basically. And yeah, so like now, if we look at the last 24 years or whatever, like, I think it's the fifth worst January. So it's not like that incredible. But yeah, certainly encouraging that we're seeing more volume and more activity, and that's positive. But yeah, like this is not something to get super excited about, and we're not certainly back to being, all the way back to where we were in 2021, which we had, twice the volume as we did this past month, just for context. All right, so new listings are up 33.5%. Again, like, yeah, you look at the numbers and, it looks certainly encouraging. And yeah, it is good. Like, certainly having more listings is good because, as you recall, like a lot of the videos that we've chatted over the last, call it 6 months, like, yeah, while sales volume has been an issue, like also new listings, like, there's the inventory is always an issue or has been an issue in the past with Toronto real estate. And now that we're seeing new listings, that's an encouraging sign. Like, so that, typically when you get new listings, we want to see the absorption rate, keep up. Now, I'm going to get into that in probably a couple minutes. But, what we want to see is when sales volumes increase, we want to see like a corresponding increase in new listings. So if you notice, we've actually got a higher supply or higher percentage of new listings than we do sales volume, right? So that what's going to happen? Like, are we going to see same price increases over the next, month or two? And that's where I want to get into. This is the really interesting stuff is the pricing analysis, because on the surface it looks great, but it's not as bullish as one would seem just looking at the surface. But before we get there, we got to talk about active listings. Active listings is up 15%. So that's great. Certainly what that means is we're seeing, similar absorption when we call it sales volume. So like that kind of pairs up nicely. But by the same token, we want to make sure that we're not seeing spikes in active listings, right? And then we don't see the sales to match that. We did see that a little bit this past fall, like especially in September. That was a big issue, and that's why we saw some sluggishness in the market back then. Okay, so months of inventory. This is one of my favorite stats to talk about each month. And we are down 1.98 months. So that's pretty encouraging. So yeah, that's an encouraging sign. So the fact that we're in and around 2 months of inventory, and this is for GTA wide, right? So this is not just Toronto, it's GTA wide across all property types. So we're seeing this with, we're including condos, freeholds, townhouses, and that's really, telling us that that we're in a balanced but tilting towards seller's territory. But if you dig into the numbers a little bit deeper, condos is actually at 3.8 months of inventory. So what is that telling me? It's like saying, well, freeholds are on fire, condos are not. And maybe that's not like a generalized statement, and that's true to some extent, but like, yeah, the freehold market's really active, like, especially if you're looking at some really like popular neighborhoods that are what I call entry level, in the sense that, like, when you're looking at freehold prices, those prices at the entry level, whether that's like, 1-1, 1-2, 1-4, like those are really moving quickly, and that is definitely sellers territory. Now, condos is another hand, where downtown condos, yes, the numbers are improving, buyers are coming back, and the days on market is decreasing, but there's still a lot of inventory, and we still had, like, we were over 6 months, 6.5 months or whatever back in the fall, and now that we're only at just under 4, like whatever, 3.8, like that's good, but we want to see that number decrease if we really want to say we're the market is a lot healthier than it is. So, like, yes, things are improving, but we're not, like, this is just to paint some realism here when we're looking at some of the numbers here. Okay, average price. Here's where I really want to get into this, because this is where I think the story. This is where maybe some of the stuff was sensationalized in the media. And I'm not trying to pick on the media, but like, hey, they're all about selling newspapers and getting clicks and all that kind of stuff. So I get it. So, like, average price, if we look at where we were last year, like, 1.1%, like, not that exciting. I get it. But, a lot of the headlines that I saw this past week was like, oh, average prices are up big, and seller bidding wars are back, and all that stuff. Yes, those things are true. So, like, average price was actually up 8% from January to February. So that's huge, right? And so, well, that doesn't say the whole story. Like, 8%, like that's not normal, and certainly that's like average price GTA wise. It's not like saying that all property types are gone up 8%. But if you remember, prices from December to January actually went down 5.3%. And I said that was very unusual. And it is, right? Like, usually we sort of see a little bit of an uptick in January relative to December, but we didn't see that. So prices were actually down 5.3%. So really, over the last quarter, like from December to February, we're up 2.7%, which is better, right? Like, so that's actually a more realistic picture to paint. But actually, the real story is, where are we from the fall market, September to today, like February numbers? And the number is, we're basically flat, right? So if you remember my videos from this past fall, like the average price was grinding down, grinding down, grinding down, and finally we saw, like, a bottoming out. Well, technically it was in January was the bottom, but anyways, what we're seeing is, like, basically, like, price, like, flat price action over the last, like, call it 6 months, or not 6 months, whatever, 5 months and change. So what does that say to me is that, like, yeah, okay, the market is seemingly better, because we've got some activity on the sales volume side. Listing absorptions are increasing, all that. So those are encouraging signs. Months of inventory is down, yes, encouraging. But, like, pricing is telling me that, like, yes, we have to be a little bit cautious with our optimism. That's basically what I'm saying, right? So, actually, I want to talk about the regional home prices, because that's where, really, if we dive into those numbers, there's actually two regions that are leading the way, which is really carrying the GTA market as a whole. So, before I dive into that, of course, this is a great sort of like visual to see, like, what I talked about, like the bottoming out was in January, and now, like, wow, like, look where we are, like, we're basically flat from September, August, right? So, now I have some predictions. I know this is not a predictions video, but we're talking about what's happening, but I'm going to get to that in a moment, about, like, what are we seeing now and what to expect. Like, I think we've got some encouraging signs that I think anyways, that we're going to continue to see some uptick in average price. We're going to continue to see sales volume increase. And that's pretty typical in the spring. Like, hey, you look at this past spring, last year, February all the way to June, like, we saw a really nice average price increase. And I think we're going to see something very similar this year. Whether that continues past summer, I have no idea. But we have certain, like, what I call potential bullish indicators that are coming out, namely with interest rates. So if interest rates do see even like a slight decline, like I think the market's basically pricing in rates to start coming down in June. I think it's a little bit optimistic, but if that happens, then certainly we could see another leg up. But so this is kind of a nice little snapshot. It was a little slide here that I like. But when we talk about regionally, like what's happening, in different regions, like, yeah, last year to this year, like basically, like, the average price is flat. So like basically average price cost, all 5 districts is basically flat. But York region and Halton region especially have been carrying the market, the past 3 months. So we've really seen some gains in these pockets, and it's been primarily in the freehold market that we've seen really some increases in average prices, because Toronto. So like if you look at average prices from just Toronto, like I'm talking about all asset types, like freeholds, detached, condos, average prices have actually declined from September to February by 2.4%. So that's really what's happening, right? So like everyone's like, oh, prices are up and this is great. Like, yeah, GTA doesn't act all the same at the same time. Like you really have to look at, micro pockets. Like even when you look at downtown condos, like downtown condos are not all behaving differently. Buildings behave very differently. Like certain buildings are a lot more attractive than others. And like same goes to neighborhoods in central Toronto, like, Leaside and North Toronto behave typically very similarly. But like if you look at like, East York, like maybe Riverdale as an example, and you look at, Bayview Village, like those markets are different. Like they behave differently. And of course, prices are different, and locations and, neighborhood amenities are all very different. But micro markets behave very differently in Toronto. So I'm just trying to paint a picture here of what's happening. Like, yes, the signs are encouraging. Things are looking more positive, but we have to take these numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt and dig deeper into it. So this is the whole purpose of the video. I hope you liked it. One other thing that I haven't talked about, which I do want to talk about, is the strength of the market. Sales to new listings ratio. I touched upon this briefly before, and that's basically like what is the absorption rate of properties in Toronto. So like if you look at GTA wide, the absorption rate in September was 28%, which is low. That's really a buyer's market. And 32% in October, again, also buyer's market. We started seeing increases in sales to new listings ratio. And right now we're at 49%. Which is not like, peaked, 2021, which were like, I think the numbers were in the 70% range. I mean, that was really unsustainable, and we don't normally see those numbers. But 50% is pretty healthy to me. Like, that's an encouraging sign. Like, so when we see sales to new listings ratio in the 30, like low 30 range, like typically that's when we see price declines. And when we're closer to the like 50% range, like whether that's like 48 to 52, somewhere in there, like we're going to see like slow but gradual price increases. So that's typically what happens. So if that continues, in other words, like if we see a spike in new supply of listings and the sales aren't being absorbed as fast as the new supply is coming to market, then you see a price decrease, right? So that makes sense, right? Like, I hope I've explained that well. But so again, I hope you love these videos. Like I love doing them. Like I love talking about these numbers, diving into the numbers, and really digging into what's happening. So hopefully you get some value out of it. But we love your feedback. We love your questions. Please keep them coming. And yeah, if you need to reach us, you can find us at our socials. And we will see you next month. Thanks again. Bye for now.